Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat. That's a show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. I am a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist, as well as the parent of an ADHDer. We went through, my wife and I, that is, went through a whole bunch with our ADHD child because at the time he was showing all the problems that you typically have. There was not any such thing as ADHD. There was also not any such thing as ADD. Those weren't even in the diagnostic and statistical manual until I think he was 10 years old about the time ADHD came, because that was the second one. At first they just called it ADD, then they decided to call it ADHD for reasons best known only to themselves. I won't go into a whole big thing about how diagnoses are become accepted, but just say we didn't have a lot of information. We didn't know a lot about what exactly ADHD was and what to do about it. So we had to make it up as we went along. It was probably a great learning experience for us, for me at least, but we made a lot of mistakes. There's just no way you're not going to make a lot of mistakes if you don't know what you're dealing with, especially in something that looks like a behavior problem. Okay, so I'm a little late today just because I had some technical difficulties. My computer, for some reason, refused to recognize my microphone. So we had to play around with that for a while, and then the solution, of course, was the solution that most often works, is you just had to shut it all down and reboot it. And then it came on like a champ. But I want to talk about, well, first of all, ADHD, as I say week after week, is a neurologic condition. Okay? The brains of ADHDers are a little different. They're not, they're not mentally retarded or anything like that. That their brains work really well. Matter of fact, on average, they're brighter than the average population. ADHDers are, that is. But it is a neurologic condition, and it has the misfortune of looking like a behavior problem. So people who haven't bothered to get educated about ADHD and what it is and stuff will tend to treat it like a behavior problem, which is the old, praise what you like and punish what you don't like, which doesn't work very well for anybody, but it's more defensible when you think you've got a behavior problem. The other problem with that is that ADHDers have some consistent issues, some things they don't do very well. And because it's a neurologic condition, unless they are specifically trained, they don't learn how to do it any better. So then they become adults and go into the workplace, and they've still got the same problems they had with school. Okay, and so what that means for an ADHD parent is they either have to learn how to do the skills training that their kids need, or they have to make sure they go to some professional psychotherapist, most probably, maybe a coach, to train them so that they can have a better adjusted life, shall we say, as adults, and not get into so much trouble at work. Okay, start off, what kind of problems do they have? Well, okay, one of the biggest ones they have is that they have extremely poor working memory. Okay, now, don't want to give you a whole neuropsych workup or anything, but basically, memory has there are multiple kinds of memory. The one that's specifically affected in ADHD is called working memory. And that is just you're not really trying to remember this stuff forever. You're just trying to keep it in mind to get the job done. That would be like mom tells the ADHD child to go up to his room and put the clean clothes away, pick up his shoes off of the floor, and put his toys away. And he gets up there and he does one of those things. And then she goes up in about a half hour and he's playing video games and wondering why she's upset. Well, it's not that he's trying, it's not that he's lazy, it's not that he's trying to get away with anything. He literally forgot that information, short-term instructions go to working memory, and we know ADHDers have terrible working memory. So that carries over into jobs. Okay, so if the boss tells an employee to do 3 things and he does one of them and is quite satisfied with that and is hanging out at the water cooler or whatever, that's somebody who's going to have a hard time keeping a job. Okay, so ADHDers have poor working memory. That means they forget stuff. That means, the poor guy who has ADHD and his wife tells him, would you pick up some milk and bread and some bananas on the way home from work? Oh yeah, okay. Gets out the door and he isn't even in the car before he's totally forgotten that. And then he comes home without either one of those. Maybe he remembers that he was supposed to go to the grocery store. And so he may luck out and get one of the items. But truthfully, he's totally forgotten what he was told. That's working memory. So you've got to teach kids when they're young that they have this problem. But it is not means they're any worse than their friends or any handicap compared to their friends. It just means that they don't remember stuff very well. And so they have to get in the habit of writing down, or whatever their best memory reminder is, and it doesn't have to be some elaborate journal, with 75 different categories that you need to fill out and all that stuff, because probably an ADHD is not going to use that in the first place. They're too confusing. They're not designed for the way his brain works. Fortunately, now most people carry cell phones with them. And, if you're used to using that to remind you of things, that's very easy to do. And it has the added advantage that you can set a timer. So if you're at work, looking at the clock, getting ready to leave, and the alarm goes off and lets you know that you're supposed to stop on the way home and buy bread and milk and bananas. Okay, there I have proven that my working memory is intact. Okay, but that's something you need to start them on early. So it's a habit, it's a routine. It's nothing major. It's just the way they've always done things to not so they don't forget little things that they're told. Okay, and you can use a day timer. It doesn't matter what specific thing you use, but it does matter that you use something that helps you out. Okay, so that's working memory. And that's also causes some other problems in that work, is that they frequently forget what they're supposed to be doing. They frequently don't master they just don't have a good handle on what they're supposed to be doing. So sometimes they miss deadlines and that sort of thing. Okay, that can be the working memory thing. It can also be the disorganization thing. Okay, because ADHDers are noticeably disorganized. The way their brains work, somebody tells them that they have a project due, they have troubles breaking that project down into component parts, which is what you have to do when you're planning any kind of a project, especially one you can't get done in one day. So ADHDers are noticeably poor at this. So you need to teach them organization skills, in a very do this, then do this, then do this kind of way. And usually the simplest way is just to, break any task down into its component parts. What are the things you need to do to get this job done? And then break it into components, hopefully, that take about the same amount of time to do, and set up a schedule so that you do it every day. And I know you're not going to get them to do this the first time you suggest it. You are going to have to work at it. You have to know a little bit about how people acquire habits. Okay, and basically how people acquire habits is they do stuff by rote, by the way they're taught to do, or told to do it, and supervised to do it. And after they've done it that way, well, depending on the person, but 8-10 times, then it's a habit, and then that's the way they do it ever after. It's sort of like your nighttime routine, when you're getting ready for bed. The way you do stuff and the order you do them in is probably been established since you were a kid. Brush your teeth, floss, go to the bathroom, change into your pajamas, da 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 da. That's a routine. That's a habit, and that was established with the help of your parents when you were a child. Okay, and then the next thing we need to look at is missing deadlines. ADHDers will miss deadlines. They have troubles with that. That again, working memory, For most people, if they're told by the boss that they have to have something done in 2 weeks, they'll remember that. But an ADHDer will not. So again, however he is organizing, if he's using his cell phone, if he's using a day timer, a whiteboard, it doesn't matter, but he's got to, write all that stuff down and get in the habit of doing it. And you have to train him on that. Okay, the other thing that ADHDers have a lot of trouble with is they have very poor time sense. That's just awareness of the passage of time. They don't do a very good job on the other side of it at estimating how long it's going to take them to get something done. Okay, now that has to be something that you train hard on. Okay, because they're going to think, and I've had my son, it's the night before a project is due, it's supposed to be a 10-page paper, and he thinks he can get it done in a half hour. Not hardly. So you're not going to teach them to do estimates, but you have to. Okay, these are all basically, we're talking about cognitive functions, okay, and even more specifically, executive functions. That is the kind of things that you need to run your world. And the thing that's the most important thing about those is that you have to be trained in them, and most people absorb the training kind of just sort of happens as they grow up, school assignments and so on teach them that they need to be able to do this, that, or the other, but ADHDers, not so much. So what you have to do with executive functions, which are the reasoning, problem solving, organizing kinds of things, what you have to do with those is you have to externalize them. Okay, because if you just leave it in here, it's not going to get done. So you have to, that's where you have all the job charts and pre-bed routines and the waking up routines and that sort of thing that you see in, the child education parts of bookstores and so on. but that's what you need to be using too. You have to train your child to use an external device to measure time passage. And one of the best ways with that to do that is use a timer of some sort. Can be on their cell phone if that's what they want. Can be on one of these new watches. I got one, and it can be an old-fashioned kitchen timer. But when they're starting to do homework, usually you want to give them, have them Pareto principle, I believe. But basically, what you're doing is you're giving them like 45, 50 minutes to do work, and then 10 minutes break after every 15 minutes to just rest, recover, go to the bathroom, get a drink of water, da 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 da. You start doing that, they start having a slightly better idea of how to estimate time. But some of them never do, and it's not gonna improve unless you're doing something actively to teach them. So another one that ADHDers have problems with is emotional regulation. Well, I mean, my ADHDer used to, frankly, concern me because his temper tantrums were, whoa, way beyond anything I had ever seen. And my little brother, when I was growing up, he used to come pretty close to that. But my youngest intensity was pretty spectacular, and that used to concern me because I didn't, like I said, we didn't have a diagnosis yet, and but the thing you have to remember is that emotional regulation is also teachable and trainable. And one of the things you have to do, you have to teach your child that they control their emotions. Billy didn't cause it because he broke your truck. He didn't cause your emotion. Your emotion was caused in here by you. And you have to keep emphasizing that they can get the idea that they have control of that. That's the biggie, is that, and I don't know why. I know I worked with a lot of people in my life, and it is easier to convince somebody that they can lose 50 pounds in 10 weeks than it is to convince them that they have control over their emotions. Because it seems like it's the stuff out there that causes them, but it's not. It's right now, here and now, the way you're thinking about it, the way you're reacting to what happened out there. And so emphasizing that and, gaining some control over that, there are two components to that. One is the actually dealing with the thought process. Okay, now you got mad at Billy because he broke your truck, and because you thought you were never going to get another truck again, and you felt the loss there, and you were angry at him for doing that to you. But anyway, what you try to do is say, okay, truck is broken. Billy didn't mean to do it. It was just an accident. Things like that happen. Da 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 da. No reason to be angry. Besides which, if I get angry at Billy, we might have a fight, and he won't want to play with me anymore. Something on that order. And the other thing you want to be teaching is relaxation training or meditation, whatever you want to call it. It's all pretty much the same thing. There's a series of techniques that reduce your emotional arousal level. Okay, and they've been pretty much every civilization in the history of man has had some set of techniques that it uses for that purpose. And it's kind of surprising, but ADHDers tend to be pretty good at using relaxation or meditation techniques. Okay, you like breathing focus kind of things, where they just slowing down their breathing, particularly the exhalation. That's the biggie, and that's something you can do with your child pretty early, and you'd be surprised. It not only is it a good way to lower your outrage or get your emotions a little more under control, but um, it also excuse me, it also calms you down and it teaches you to focus. Okay, because you're thinking, if you're just sitting there paying attention to your breath, your mind's going to wander off. Okay, so what you always teach is that, okay, your mind's going to wander. When your mind wanders, very gently, just bring your attention back to your breathing. And sometimes you have them say a word when they're as they exhale, and the simplest one is just one. You just one. That's the way it works, and that way you it's kind of an attention concentration training, which of course we're happy about. Okay, and the other things that tend to happen are ADHDers. I think I've told you probably almost every week is that on average they get 70 critical comments per day. Which guess what that does for your self-esteem? You tend to have low self-esteem and wonder why you're always in trouble and that sort of stuff. And that one is one that you're probably going to have to consider a therapist. Okay, there are two kinds of folks that work with ADHD. One are therapists, psychotherapists, and that's psychologists, social workers, counselors. Okay, and not everybody who's got a degree knows what they're doing with ADHD. Okay, ADHD is kind of a specialized bird, and you want to find somebody who knows what they're doing. And the best way to do that is to talk to your friends who have kids that have ADHD and see who they're using. Otherwise, it's a lot of work finding a competent therapist. There are tons of people who are out there working with ADHD who don't know much about what they're doing, and that's unfortunate, but that's kind of the way it is. So you want to find somebody who is experienced and has a good reputation for working with ADHD. And then the other thing that you can use, and this is especially as an adult that they would probably benefit from, is a coach. Okay, and I don't mean like a guy with a whistle and and that sort of thing, but I mean somebody who's used to working with people who need some assistance in living up to their potential, and that's kind of the difference. I mean, psychologists and so on work trying to get people from lower level of functioning to normal functioning. A coach tries to take people as high as they can go, uh, and I do both. That's one of those things. I actually enjoy the coaching a little bit more than the therapy, but most adults, especially most adults who are working at executive type positions, have a coach that they use, for their ADHD mostly. Okay, so that's a whole bunch of stuff. We were a little bit behind the power curve because of my technological problems, and frankly shook me up a little bit and threw me off my game. So next week we'll try to get into it a little bit more in a little more organized detail. So make sure you know my website is terrygingrassphd.com. From there you can look at signing up for, to be on my list of people who get special announcements and that sort of thing. And periodically I will do some specialized training. Usually they're 6 weeks or so, and it'd help you out so you're not always trying to guess what's going on and why it's going on. I mean, the deal with ADHD is you really have to have a good foundation in the neurologic aspects of it. Okay, and as a neuropsychologist, I have a lot of specialized training in that area. So, and like I said, then periodically I'll be offering trainings and that sort of stuff. Okay, so I will catch you next time. Sorry about the delay today, but remember, this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, and this is the show that's designed to make the world safe for ADHDers, because we need ADHD people, okay? People who are not divergent thinkers are only good at keeping the system going the way it's going. People who are divergent thinkers, outside the box thinkers, they're the folks who can look at a situation, see the problems, and aren't afraid to offer solutions. And we need a lot of that. Apparently, if you look at the news at all, we need a whole bunch of that. So cherish your ADHD child and encourage the heck out of him or her. We'll catch you next week.